everybody, and welcome back to my Graphic 45 Ghostly Greetings mini album tutorial series. In today's video, we are going to be building page 4. The inspiration for this page is actually coming from this strip down here. Now, I wanted to try to keep these 3 cards as intact as I possibly could. I've had this idea in my head for quite a while since looking at this paper, but because most of the other pages were too small, I wasn't able to do it. This page should work since it's 10 inches. This is 10.5, but the way I'm going to cut this, it should definitely work the way that I'm envisioning it. So this piece down here is what we're going to be using as the inspiration for the front of the page. So for the very first piece, I've got my piece cut to 10 inches by 6 3/4. On the 6 3/4 inch side, I've scored it 1/2 inch on that top side, and I'm going to fold on this score line to prepare this piece for the page. Now what I'm going to be doing is creating a large flap here at the top. This is just going to go right at the top of the page, that score line even with the top edge. Once this is on, the next piece I have measures 3 3/4 by 7 3/4. On the 7 3/4 inch side, I've scored it 1/2 inch on the top, and then I've used my decorative edge die on that bottom edge with the point facing down. This piece is going to go here, and it's going to go down the entire page, but I need to make sure that that point is actually at the edge of the page. It doesn't hang over my page. So when you go to do this and you put this score line on top of the piece that we just put on the page, if for some reason yours is hanging over, you're going to need to either recut this piece or rescore the piece so that it is in the correct position. You'll want to take your centering ruler and measure over in the center so that this piece will be centered on the page. So I've measured 1 7/8 of an inch over from the center on each side, and I've marked my paper where this needs to go. Now when I put this on, I'm lining up this tip here at the bottom, then I'm coming up here at the top and making sure that everything is straight and right where it needs to be. I'm going to hold it down and then burnish this into place. Going to open this piece up, and the next 2 pieces are the same size, 4 1/4 by 5 1/4. On the 4 1/4 inch side, I'm going to score 1/2 inch on the right side of one piece and 1/2 inch on the left side of the other piece. Then I'm going to fold on these score lines and prepare these pieces. Now once my pieces are prepared, I'm going to take each of these pieces one at a time, applying my adhesive to the 1/2 inch tab, and these are going to be side flaps. So I'm going to place this on the bottom edge of here. So I'm lining up the right side score line with the right side of the page, and then the bottom edge will be along the bottom edge of the page as well. This will actually make it so that there is an even amount or space above and below that flap. So that's where I got the dimension for the upper flap. So it will be spaced evenly. Then I'm going to do the same thing with the opposite side, applying my adhesive to my tab, and then I'm going to line up this side with the left edge and the bottom edge. Just putting this right here in place and then burnishing this down. Now if I bring this piece back in, this part is going to go here. These 2 are going to be cut apart here, but this will flip up and then these will flip open. So we'll have larger photo areas here, but I just thought that would be cute to have multiple layers underneath there and use those cards. One final piece I am going to put on. I'm going to lift everything up here and set this aside for now and bring in my last piece. Now my last piece measures 10 inches by 3 1/2. It's scored at 1/2 inch on the 3 1/2 inch side on the bottom. I am going to fold up on this score line, and then I've actually marked on the top edge here in the center. I'm going to bring in my little mat that I have here, and I am going to actually be using my die to cut a pocket into this. So my point is going to be facing down, and I am going to be putting this on just like I normally would with these top pieces here at the edge of my paper. The little point piece in the center, I'm going to line everything up. And now I am going to run this through my die cutting machine just like this, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do to the sides. So this is what my piece looks like so far. I am just going to take my scissors and snip away that piece right there. And now I'm going to prepare the rest of my piece. So what I am going to do, excuse my head for a moment, I'm going to use this last curve part. I'm going to line up. So I've lined this up and I put this point at the top of the paper, and I'm just going to trace this here. Now once I have this, I am going to go like this with my scissors and just follow along. Just like that to continue that pattern. I'll do the same thing on the opposite side, taking my curve part here and then making the point touch up here, and then I'll draw along there and use my scissors to extend that cut. Now once I have this, I am going to go ahead and adhere it down to the bottom of the page, just like this, with this score line right along the bottom edge. Now the last thing I've made for this page is another booklet like I did on page 3. So I've taken an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. On the 11-inch side, I scored it 5.5 and just folded it in half to make that large booklet that I'm going to stick down here in that pocket. I may add additional photo mats later, but for now, this is all I'm going to be adding to this page. Now for the back of the page, my inspiration is this piece here. This is what was on the front cover as the flap, but I'm going to use it on this one over here as a flap that's going to open up, and there's going to be stuff underneath of the page. So this is the only piece I'm going to use. I'm not going to be using this. So when I look at this, what I decided was I'm going to have it be here on the side, but I'm going to have it be a pocket, and I'll have a photo mat that holds this flap closed as well. So we're going to start first with this piece here. This piece is 5.5 by 7.25. On the 5.5-inch side, I've scored it 1/2 inch on the left-hand side. Now with this piece, I have to put this piece down first because that smaller flap is going to go directly on top of this one. So I'm going to adhere this right here to the left side of my page. Once this piece is on, the next piece is 4.5 by 7.25. On the 4.5-inch side, I've scored it 1/2 inch on the left-hand side. Then on the right edge, I've taken my decorative die with the point facing to the left to cut that edge. And now I'm going to simply fold on the score line here, and then I'm going to adhere this piece right down here to the edge, just on top of the flap we just put on. Now for this side over here, I have a flap cut to 6.5 by 7.25. On the 6.5-inch side, I've scored it 1/2 inch on the right-hand side. Then I've taken my decorative edge die with the point to the left, cutting on this left edge. Now this piece is going to fit in the cutout for the pocket, but there's going to be a small space as well. So this piece, whenever it's here on the edge of the page, there is going to be that nice little gap here so that you can place the photo mat there that's going to actually hold this page closed. Now I'm going to open these flaps up and come to the inside. And for the inside, I have a simple belly band, 3 1/4 by 8 1/4. On the 8 1/4 inch side, I've scored it 1/2 and 7 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to fold on both of these score lines here. And then I'm going to be placing this here in the center of my page. So I will need to use my centering ruler to make sure to mark that center, and then I'm going to adhere it right into the middle of the page. Once my belly band is on, I've got several photo mats already cut for this page. The first one is 8 1/2 by 4 inches. I'm going to just stick this under here, and then I've got 2 4 1/4 by 6 1/4 ones that I'm going to stick like this here and here. I'm then going to close these flaps, and then I've got another one that's 7 1/4 by 5 1/4. This is the one that's going to go here, and it's going to keep this flap closed once this one is a pocket. For right now though, I am going to stick this one underneath my belly band so that it doesn't get lost or bent when I start decorating my front of my page. Now the first thing that I did was cut my 3 cards apart. So I have actually cut this. This one is 3 1/2 inches, and it was just on those little gray dots. This one I'm going to be placing on the front of this left-hand flap. Then on this one is also 3 1/2 inches cut on those gray dots. And this one's going to go here. And then this one is about 3 3/8 of an inch, and it's going to go here in the center. Now, before I put this one on, I'm going to cut my pieces for here and here as well. I've taken a piece from my 12 by 12 paper over here. This is cut to 3 1/2, and then I have cut one full piece to 1 7/8 of an inch. This one is 7/8 of an inch, and it's going to go here on the top. Then this one is 1 inch, and I've used my decorative edge die with the point facing down on this one, and this is going to go here. So once all these pieces are on, everything will line up nice and straight across here with these 3 cards, and then these pieces will line up, so there'll be small black spaces between those pieces. Once these papers are on, I did go ahead and open up. I put my magnet on already, just slightly down from the edge of this flap. So from the middle of my magnet to the bottom of the page is about 3/4 of an inch. Then I did go ahead and add my second magnet, and it's down far enough that the paper will cover it here. Now I'm going to jump to putting the pieces on here and here. So I've taken my 12 by 12 checker pattern paper, and I have cut a piece to 9 3/4 by 7/8 of an inch and 9 3/4 by 2 3/4. This 7/8 of an inch piece is going to go up here at the top of the page, and it's actually going to tuck just slightly underneath these 2 flaps, just barely, if you can see that. Once I have my little black border here, it's just barely tucked underneath of here. Then for this one, this paper is for the pocket, so we're going to need to cut this one with our die. But if you remember correctly, this was the one that the die was longer than the page, so I had to actually draw on the piece to get the rest of my edge cut. So what I'm doing now for this one is I'm just going to mark where my center is, since my little mat is too small to actually fit everything on here. The whole piece of paper, I'm just going to do it this way. Now remember, we need that point facing down for the pocket. And so I'm going to line up my piece with my edges of my die in the correct position. And now I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine, and then I'll come back and redo the edges. Now, if you don't remember how you did this with your piece, you'll need to go back and look at what you did. For mine, I'm taking this curve here and putting it on that last curve. And then this point is going to be right at the edge of that paper. And then I am going to just go ahead and draw that line there. And on the opposite end, I'm going to do the same thing with this curve and having this point be right at the edge. And then I'll draw my line here and then use my scissors to finish this cut. Then once you have your piece cut, you'll need to go ahead and lay it on here just to double check and make sure that everything lines up correctly. So now I'm going to go ahead and put this piece on and this piece here on those flaps. Now once these pieces are on, I'm going to actually come up here first, and I've taken from my 8 by 12 by 12 patterns and solids that I used earlier, I've cut a piece to 3.5 by 5. It's going to go here. And then I've taken another piece from that 12 by 12 paper that we were cutting from previously on the opposite side. I've cut this piece to 1 3/4 of an inch by 3.5. Now this piece I've cut to 3/4 of an inch. It's going to go down here, and I'm going to start with this piece just above that score line. Then I'm going to place this piece. Then for this one, I took my decorative edge die with the point facing the top edge, and I have cut this piece, so it's 1 inch by 3.5, and it's going to go here covering that magnet at the top of that flap. Once this is finished, I'm going to then open these, and we're going to work on this spread here. Now, the first thing that I did, I took, this was my 8 by 8 paper. I know I'm going to be using this on the back side, but I just couldn't resist doing this because it fit perfectly. So I've taken this, this is all that's left. So it is 1 3/8 of an inch, and then I've cut it to 5 inches. I'm going to be placing this piece here so that when these are closed, this piece actually fits right in between these two flaps when it's closed. So this is how I'm actually going to put this on so that I know that it is directly in the center. Now, once this is on, I'm going to cut some papers for here. I've used my 8.5 by 11 orange stripe paper. These are cut to 3 5/8 by 5 inches. And I'm going to be placing one here and one here, making sure that there is that small border between these pieces. And so it's going to push it a little bit closer to that score line just to give it that nice uniform border. Now for these two side pieces, I've gone back to my red patterns and solids to cut these pieces. They're 3.5 by 5 inches, and I'm going to be placing one on each of these flaps. To break up all of this patterned paper, I do have some strips here. Now these are the leftover pieces from these strips that I have from previously that we trimmed off. Now I have cut these to 3 3/4 of an inch. And I'm just going to apply a little teeny tiny bit of adhesive on each of these edges here. And I'm going to take one of these and put it here at the top on this flap. And it should adhere to that black cardstock on each side of this photo mat so that the photos can actually slide up underneath of it without having to cut the photo. Then for the second piece, it's 3 3/4 of an inch as well. Going to do the same thing with it, just applying adhesive to the ends. And then I'm going to come over here and put this one in the same place, just at the top of this flap, adhering it to that black cardstock, so then that photo can slide up underneath of it. Now later I will probably come back in and add some additional embellishments in here with my ephemera assortment or my stickers, but for now I'm just going to leave this as it is. So we've got, that's the look of the page I was going for. So this orange breaks this up and this actually matches the opposite side of the page. And then we've got our photo spread here. And then this will flip up again, and we're going to go ahead and work on this upper flap and then the pocket. From my 12 by 12 paper, I have cut a piece to 9 3/4 by 4 3/4. I'm going to be placing this one here at the top of the page base. And then once this is on, I'm going to apply a thin line of adhesive down each side of this lower flap and close it to form that pocket. Once I have that paper on, I'm going to go ahead up here to this flap. I've cut my 8 by 8 paper here. I've cut 2 of these to 4 inches by 6 inches for full-size photos. They're going to go on each side here and here. And then for the center, I've taken my 8 by 8 paper and I've cut this piece to 1.5 by 6, and I'm going to place it right here between those two pieces with that nice border between them. Once these papers are on, I'm going to move this out of the way and bring my card in. So for my card, I've taken this piece from my 12 by 12 paper and I've cut this to 5 1/4 by 5 1/4. And I'm going to be placing this in the center of my booklet. And then from that 8 by 8 paper, I've cut 2 pieces that are 1 3/8 by 5 1/4 for each side of the booklet. And there will be those 2 spaces between each of the papers to give it that nice uniform black border. So here's the front of my booklet, and just like the last booklet that we made, I will come back later and add the pieces to the inside and the back cover. But for now, I'm going to just stick this in my pocket, close this flap, close this one, and we're then going to next move on to the back side of the page and start decorating here. Now the first piece for the front of the page, the inspiration piece, is over here. This is from that 12 by 12 paper. I've cut this to 3 3/4. Then I've taken my decorative edge die with that point facing to the left and used it on the right hand side. It's going to go here right on the front of this flap. Then for over here, I've taken my 8.5 by 11 black spiderweb paper and I've cut a piece to 5 3/4 by 7 inches. And then I've used my decorative edge die on the left edge with the point facing to the left. And this piece I'm going to be placing here right on the front of this flap. Now I will likely come back and add some type of embellishment here to make this a little bit brighter, but I will do that later. I'm going to open up and I'm going to be cutting a piece for here. So I have my 8.5 by 11 patterns and solids paper. I've cut this to 1.5 by 7. I'm going to be placing this here on the right edge of this piece. Then I'm going to apply a thin line of adhesive across the top and the bottom of this flap and close it to form that pocket. Next, I'm going to open up to the inside and work on the base of the page first. So for the base of the page, I've taken this from my 12 by 12 papers and I've cut these to 3.5 by 7 inches. And they're going to go here and here on each side of the page base, tucking slightly into my belly band. Now for the belly band, I have this piece here from the 12 by 12 that I'm going to be putting in the center. Then I've taken from my spiderweb 8.5 by 11 patterns and solids. I've cut 2 pieces here, and these are 3 inches by 1.5 inches, and I'm going to place one here and one here to cover my belly band. Now for both of my sides, I'm going to be using this here. So I have a couple of pieces that came from this leftover 8.5 by 11 sheet I've already cut into, and then I've cut one from the new sheet. These are 4 pieces that measure 4 inches by 3 inches. These photo mats are going to go here and here, here and here. So on the inner sides by the score lines. And then I'm going to take my 8-inch paper like this, and I've cut 2 pieces of this to 4 inches by 3/4 of an inch. And I'm going to be placing one between each of these here. And then I'm going to cut pieces from here, and I've used this paper here from my 8 by 8 papers. I first cut a piece that is 3/4 by 7 inches for this side. Then this side here is 1 3/4 by 7. And then I took my decorative edge die and use it on the right edge with the point facing to the right. This piece is going to go here on the edge of this flap. Once all the papers are on, I've just put my photo mats back underneath my belly band, except for the one that's going to hold the page closed. So I have it here. It's that 7 1/4 by 5 1/4 inch piece. I did cut a piece of my paper here. I believe this is from the 8 by 8 paper. It's the smaller piece. And this was the leftover part that I'd had. So I cut this to 7 inches by 5 inches. I'm going to place this right here on the front of my photo mat. Now, once this piece is on, I'm actually going to take this chipboard piece. I have a piece of my leftover cardstock here. I have taken this and stuck this on the edge so that the point is on the edge here, and I've just traced around this. Now I'm going to cut this out, and I'm going to actually be using the chipboard piece on the edge almost like a pull to help get that photo mat out of the pocket, but also to add some decoration to that paper. It's a little bit plain where that spiderweb paper is, so I want to go ahead and add a little bit of embellishment there. And this is how I'm going to do this. Now what I'm going to be doing, I want this to sit just past the edge. So I am going to have the point of this now on the paper itself. With my chipboard piece, I am going to be putting a thin line of adhesive just down the center for now. Then what I'm going to do is take this piece, try not to drop yours on your photo mat. I'm going to take this piece and I am going to set this here in the center so that the point is right where that edge of the decorative floral paper is. Now I'm going to take this piece and apply my adhesive to the piece. And then I'm going to place this right on the back side of my chipboard, and it's going to extend over onto my photo mat as well. So it's going to cover the back of the chipboard, but it's also going to give it a little bit more stability so that this chipboard piece is adhered to the back side of this, as well as just that little tiny bit on the front. Just like this. And then I'm going to take this and bring it right in here as that closure for my page. And this is it for page 4 and the end of this tutorial. We're definitely getting close to the end of finishing this album. So in the next video, what I'm going to do is begin putting the pages in the album. I'll decorate the inside, front, and back covers, and then we will add the additional acetate pages and work on those photo mats. So I hope to see you in the next tutorial.